Welcome to Excel magic trick number 1495. Hey, we're working on the same problem we've been working on the last few videos. We got to see how to allocate invoice header amounts to a transaction line item table. And in this video, we get to use Power Query. This really should be called Power Query Magic Trick. Hey, here's the fundamental problem we've been working on. We have two different transaction or fact tables. This table stores the numbers at the invoice level or the header level. Shipping cost and invoice discount are for the entire invoice. But an entire invoice is made up of multiple lines or multiple product recordings where we sold 21 quantity of Sunbelt, 88 of Crested Butte, and so on. And if our goal is to use some criteria or filter or dimension from the line item table on the numbers that exist in the header or invoice tables, we have to figure out how to allocate these numbers down to the line level. Then we're allowed to use whatever conditions or criteria, filters or dimensions work on this table. This is our end result, product and the discount and shipping amounts. Now the problem comes from the difference of level in these two tables, the difference in the grain or granularity. This is at the entire invoice level. This is at the product or line level. Now this is the fourth video in our series. We're going to use Power Query. In our earlier videos, we saw two videos on Excel formulas. Last video, we saw DAX. Next video, we'll see Power BI Desktop. All right, let's go over to the sheet Tables for PQ. Now, in order to use Power Query, you either have to have Excel 2016, Office 365, where the data ribbon tab will show Get and Transform. That's our Power Query. That group is on the left side. If you have Office 2016 but not Office 365, your Get and Transform will be on the left side. Also, in the latest version, we have queries and connections here. If you're working in 2013 or 10, then you have to download Power Query. But word to the wise, just get Office 365, and that's the end of the story, because the latest updates are truly amazing and what you can do with Power Query and other new tools in Office 365 Excel. All right, here's our tables. One, this is the invoice header table. This is the line item invoice detail table, and this is our product table. Now, in order to use Power Query to make this transformation, we're going to have to get all three tables up into Power Query. Now, I've already imported both of these first two tables. So I'm going to click in a single cell on the product table, go up to Data, Get and Transform, and there it is, From Table Range. When I click that, it opens up the Power Query editor. There's our table. There's the name, which we are going to use. That's exactly the same as the table name over in Excel. And there's our steps. Now, we're just going to load this as a connection because we need to work with this table and the other three tables to make our transformations. Click the drop-down, Close and Load To. If you have earlier versions, this will say Load To, but the buttons you click are the same. Only Create Connection. Click OK. That opens this Queries and Connection pane. In earlier versions, this button right here is not in Queries and Connections. It's over in the Get and Transform group. Now, I'm going to double-click any one of these to open up the editor. Over on the left, we come over to our Queries arrow to open up and see the three imported queries. We haven't done anything so far. We just brought the data in. Now, there's a few ways we can do this. I'm going to start with the line item detail. And I want to keep this original table. So I'm going to right-click and point to Duplicate. Duplicate just copies it and brings over the same exact code as a separate new query. Now, notice the query's highlighted. I'm going to hit the F2 key to rename it. And I'm going to call this something like Product Report and Enter. Now, we started at the line item level. We can see these first three invoices. the three different products. We have units and price. We're going to calculate the line item sales, then the line item weight, and then we're going to group it so that we have the invoice totals for sales and weight. Both of those numbers will be used as the denominator in percentage allocation rates. All right, instead of going up to add column, custom column, and creating a manual extra column with the formula, I'm simply going to click on quantity, hold shift, click on unit price, go up to add columns, but from number we have standard drop down, and we're going to select multiply. This will add a new column and do the multiplication for us. It doesn't have a good name. Instead of double clicking and giving it some new name, enter, that adds an extra step. By the way, many beautiful, awesome things about Power Query. Anytime we have a step we don't want, Control-Z is not going to work, but this red X will, so I get rid of that. Instead, I'm going to look up to the formula bar, and when I did standard multiply, it did Table.AddColumn. There's the previous step name. That's the step that this current step is acting on. You could see the previous name right there. There's the name of the column. At each row, there's our formula. Now, in our last 3 videos, we talked about how tables in Excel, formulas in Excel, and DAX each have their own way of making row-by-row calculations in a table. Here in Power Query, there it is. At each row, there's the formula. And of course, quantity and unit price, just like we had in DAX and Excel tables, those are the column names. But of course, as they copy down, they get the individual item in each row. And this last argument is the data type. We don't need to change this here. Maybe at the very end, if we wanted to change it to currency, we could. But we are going to change this. I'm going to double-click multiplication and call this exactly what it is. Line sales, and enter. So that just saved us a step by looking up to the formula bar, understanding the different arguments in the function, and changing them. Now, in order to calculate our next column, line weight, I need to look up in the product table the weight for each product. So for Sunbelt, Crested Butte, and Kangaroo, we need to look up the weights. Now in DAX, we had to use relationships and the related function. In Excel, well, we did it a few ways in Excel. We used VLOOKUP, and we used a crazy array formula using SUMIFS. But over here in Power Query, we use joins. So I go up to Home, over to Combine. They're actually called merges. So we're going to merge queries, merge something to this query, not a new one. So I'm going to click Merge Query. It needs to know what 2 columns connect the 2 tables. Now, this is on the many side, so I'm going to select Product. Then we go over to our Lookup table or our Dimension table, Product. This Product column, when I select it, this is the column that has the unique identifier. So this is a way of doing either a relationship and related over in DAX or VLOOKUP or other lookup formulas in Excel. Now, this is a join. And we're going to use a left outer join. That means everything from the first and matching from the second. I'm going to click OK. And what does it do? Since we join these 2 items, that Sunbelt product brought over the full table. Now, if you click off to the side, you can see it didn't bring over the full table. It actually brought over just the one line in that lookup table. Now let's come up to our Expand button to expand. And there we have the choice. Which columns do we want that are associated with the Sunbelt product? I'm going to uncheck Use Original, uncheck everything. And the only item we need is weight. When I click OK, there's our VLOOKUP or our related relationship. It got exactly the correct weight for each product. Now we can multiply. Weight is selected. Holding Control, I click on Quantity. Now I go up to Add Column, From Number, Standard, and Multiply. Come up to the formula bar, double-click multiplication. We're going to call this something smart, line weight. Notice I'm distinguishing in the names between the two different granularities of our two different fact tables. This is line. Later, when we calculate total sales and total weight, we'll call it invoice weight and invoice sales. Now, our next task is to add line sales and line weight for each invoice. Once we have those invoice level numbers, we can use them in the denominator to create our allocation rates. Now, if we come over here, we could sort this to see there's the 3 invoices. And in Excel, we think of this calculation of adding a particular column or whatever calculation based on grouping some items as either a pivot table or SUMIFS. Over here in Power Query and SQL, we call this grouping because we want to group these 3 records together based on invoice number and then make some aggregate calculation on these 2 columns. Now, we don't need this sorted rows. I'm going to come over to the red X and delete that step. Invoice number is selected. Group by is located in lots of different places. Transform, group by, home, group by. Or we can simply right-click the column header, go down to Group By. We're going to select Advanced because we want to do 2 aggregations on invoice number. The first, new column name, invoice sales. The operation, we want to sum. The column, we want to sum. Line sales. Now I click Add Aggregation. The new column name, invoice weight. We want to sum using line weight. Now, when we click OK, this will just be like a pivot table or SUMIFS. There's our aggregate calculation based on that condition or criteria. Now, our next step is to go and get from this invoice header level the actual invoice discount that we can match up with invoice sales. So we're going to do another merge. Here's the table. There's the item we want to, in essence, look up. Home, combine, drop down for merge. Merge queries. Invoice number from this product report table. Select invoice header for our second table. Invoice number. Left outer is fine. Click OK. We get our table. If I click off to the side, I can see the record for that invoice number. We actually need both of these invoice level amounts. So I come up to the Expand button, unselect all, invoice shipping and invoice discount, click OK. Now I want to take invoice discount and divide it as the numerator on top of invoice sales. I'm holding Control. I'm going to click on invoice sales, up to Add column, over to From Number Standard, and we want to divide. Because we selected invoice discount first, it's in the numerator. We could see up here in the formula bar, discount divided by sales. I'm going to double-click division, invoice percent discount, and enter. Now we have our allocation rate for each invoice. Now, we're going to use that invoice percentage discount on all of the line items. That means that 0.065 will be used on each line in the line item table. But when it comes to allocating the invoice shipping, we're actually, when we get to the line item table, have to calculate the line item weight, and we're going to use that number in the denominator. So when we're allocating shipping, there'll be a different percentage or allocation rate for each line. Our next step is, since this is one line for each invoice, we need to merge this with the line item table. Back up to Home, over to Merge, Merge Queries, Invoice Number. Now this is the one side. When we select Line Item Invoice Detail, this will be the many side. That means when we return this merge, that first one line for invoice, that data will be repeated for whatever data we get from the second table. When I click OK, there's the table. And if I click off to the side, you can clearly see there's 3 records being returned in that single cell. So now when I expand this again, that line will be repeated 3 times for all of the data from our line item table. Expand, uncheck all. I actually want product, quantity, and unit. Now notice for our line item calculations, once we have these, we can calculate the line item sales, but we're still going to have to do one more merge to get the weight. Click OK. So let's go back up to combine, merge, merge. Second table is going to be dProduct. We have lots of repeats here. We're going to look up the weight for each one of our products. So we select product in both tables. Left outer is fine. Click OK. Scroll over here. Expand. All we need is weight. Click OK. And finally, we have for each row all of the numbers we need for our final 2 calculations. Let's do line item discount first. I'm going to click on unit price. I'm holding control, quantity, and invoice percentage discount. And so now we can multiply those 3 to get our line discount. Add columns over to from number standard and multiply. Double click, and I'm going to call this line discount and enter. Now the final calculation, we're going to have to actually go up to add column, create a custom column. We're going to name this line shipping. And our calculation will be, and this is a similar calculation we made in DAX and in Excel. We need in the numerator the line item weight. So there's the weight per product times the quantity per product per line, close parentheses, divided by, and there's our invoice weight. Now I'm going to click OK. We'll come back and edit this. But we can see now that we get a different percentage. In fact, I'm going to sort just temporarily. We could see for that first invoice, 1, 2, 3, those all add up to 1. Those are the 3 different allocation rates for this invoice's shipping amount. That 1 means there was only 1 line item in this invoice. Now I'm going to come down and click the red X to get rid of that sort. Now I'm going to come to added custom column and double click to open it back up and edit it. Times, and we want to allocate invoice shipping. By the way, if you wanted to round, you could. We'd have to use the number.round function. But we're not going to round. I'm going to click OK. Finally, line shipping. Oh, look at that. I misspelled it, so I'm going to come up to the formula bar. Little h, delete, and enter. We have line shipping and line discount. We're going to click on the product. And this is where we create our pivot table or SUMIFS like we did in our earlier videos. But because we're in Power Query, we right-click, Group By, Advanced, New Column Name. And guess what? I'm going to put, just so we understand clearly, that this amount that's being created can be sliced or diced by any condition, criteria, filter, or dimension that works on the line item table. In our final report, we probably wouldn't want line like this, but I'm going to include it. We're going to sum. What are we going to sum? Line discount. Add aggregation. Shipping on invoice line. Sum. And we want the very last line, shipping. Click OK. And there's our finished report. There's all the steps we went through to create this report. Come up to Home, Close and Load dropdown, Close and Load to. I'm going to drop this as a table on a new sheet. Click OK. Control and Roll. Highlight the cells. Control 1, number, currency, and enter. And there we have used Power Query to allocate invoice level or header level numbers down to the line item level, and then created a product report with those line item amounts. All right, so that was a lot of fun with Power Query. We did a bunch of steps, including learning how to multiply using the add columns from number standard, which is our method of doing a lookup either to the one side or the many side. We saw a bunch of other different calculations and merging. We even, at the very end, had to create a custom column where we created our own formula. That is a lot of fun with Power Query. Now, if you like that video, be sure to click that thumbs up, leave a comment, and sub, because there's always lots more videos to come from Excel is Fun, including our next video where we'll see how to solve this problem using Power BI Desktop. All right, we'll see you next video.